Say the Maine Coast, and you see the restless sea beating against rocky headlands. Or feel the gentle rhythm of lobster boats shuttling in scenic harbors. For many New Englanders, it's a summer beach to escape the city's heat, or a quiet spot by a foggy harbor. Maine's coast conjures up images of lonely lighthouses. And for several million visitors a year, the attraction is this section of Acadia National Park, usually remembered as one of the most dramatically beautiful sights along America's Atlantic coast. But the reality of the Maine coast is more than beautiful landscapes and rustic images. It's a special place, a world unto itself. Counting inlets, bays, and islands, Maine's coast is over 2,500 miles long. That's longer than the coastlines of California and Oregon combined. And in so much area, there is an incredible diversity of people and landscapes. This is the home of the sharp-tongued Yankees, famous for taking their livelihood from the sea. And it's the summer home to the rich and famous, who've also left their own mark upon the coast. Here, too, is a living sense of history. Everywhere are reminders of Maine's heyday as a center for coastal trade. Throughout our early years, Maine's deep harbors and stout pines made this a place to build boats. The expression "down east" came from those days. As the tall ships set sail from Boston to ports in Maine, they'd be sailing down the prevailing summer winds, and they'd be heading northeast. Hence, they would be sailing down east. Today, the sailboat is still a common sight along this coast, but few of them could be called working boats. The Maine Yankee is a classic character of American myth and folklore. The stereotype needs some updating, but there are lots of characters along the Maine coast worth getting to know. Like Dick Carlson, a third-generation lobsterman at Tennant's Harbor.
I just liked it ever since I was a kid. I started out going with my father, and I enjoyed being on the water.
There are gracious innkeepers, like the Litchfields of Kennebunkport.
And I think anywhere you go in Maine, you get a picture postcard look. It's not fictitious. It's real. You can say, I've been there.
And there are just plain characters, like Robert Skoglund, a storyteller from St. George who calls himself the humble farmer.
I suppose you noticed that our houses down here in St. George on Route 131 are freshly painted and kept up. Andy Wyeth's doing. Every morning in the summertime, he loads a couple of dogs into his Jeep over in Cushion, drives up Thomaston, goes right by here on his way to Port Clyde to his family's old studio where he works in the summer. If anyone along this road was to let their house get the least bit weather-beaten, Andy'd be right out in the front yard, drawing it on a sketch pad. A week later, he'd have it in a painting. The next month, you'd see a picture of it in Time magazine. I have seen a banker from New York City get out of a Rolls Royce in broad daylight, rip the clapboards right off Ralph Klein's house, just because Andy'd painted it. We are sick and tired of being famous. Think what that means. Every week for the rest of your life, there'd be an arty photographer around from one of them slick New York magazines wanting to do a story on you and your quaint old house. You'd never get no rest.
These people and their works are as important as the scenery in understanding the attraction of the Maine coast. So come along, watch the surf on the rocks, discover the romance of one of America's special places, the Maine coast.
In Maine, play can often be confused with work. Nowhere can this be better seen than aboard one of the Maine Windjammers. They're the 14 big sailboats that explore Maine's coast from Booth Bay to Bar Harbor all summer and fall. On Captain Hawkins' Merry Day, which sails out of Camden, they can introduce up to 25 people to a little-known opportunity for learning to work together.
She's a 90-foot schooner that we carry passengers for hire on. She's typical of the kind of vessel that was built 100 years ago on this coast to haul freight and cargoes up and down the coast. She was built specifically for carrying passengers, but she's along the lines of an old coaster. One time, these vessels were literally thousands of them around. They were as numerous as trucks are on the road today. And they carried freight. They carried everything that moved was carried by boat. We go back to that, and we're moving around on a boat that's propelled by a sail, and the sails are handled by people, and it gives people a chance to find out what it was like to pull on a line and get some small idea of what life must have been like for people who made their living this way. And it is a very romantic thing. It's fun. You're sailing around among the islands that these boats sailed around. For the most part, the islands look the same as they did when these boats were carrying freight 100, 150 years ago. You get up in the morning fairly early. We serve breakfast at 7:30, so everybody's up and around fairly early. Then we usually get underway right after breakfast. That is, get the anchor up and leave the harbor that we're in. And the people help get the sails up. And the sails are heavy. It takes a lot of people to get it. It takes a minimum of 12 pretty healthy people to get the sails up. So we're happier if everybody does work. And so we put a string of people on either side, and a crew member at the head of them that directs them, tells them what to do, and they hoist the sails. And then we have to hoist the anchor, and that's always fun. It's a hand-powered windlass. When the anchor is broken out of the bottom, we put up more sails, depending on what the breeze is. We have 7 altogether, so we can spend the better part of the morning getting sails up. It's fun. Everybody gets to work as much as they want and help out. Once we're underway, people usually tend to fall asleep or sit and read or talk to each other, get to know everybody else on the boat. The best thing about a windjammer cruise is that it's not like anything that people are likely to encounter in their daily lives. Therefore, it gives them a chance to step into another world. There's no motors, there's no cars, there's no asphalt, there's no telephones. You don't have to cook your meals. You know, everybody gets away from everything they want, and they get a chance to sit back and sort of reflect on what it is going on in their own lives. We didn't put a motor in on purpose, so we don't have to listen to all that noise. We don't have showers, so nobody has to fight over who's going to be in there and who isn't. And you know, there's a lot of reasons. We didn't put a lot of these modern conveniences and whatnot into the boat for a reason. It's part of the flavor of this trip is to get a little bit of a taste of what it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago.
The southern coast of Maine below Portland is the most accessible part of the state. It's the home of the Maine beaches.
Some say that the coast south of Portland no longer feels like a part of Maine. It's become a kind of suburb of Boston, like Revere or Gloucester. York, for instance, is an old-fashioned summer place that's been attracting Bostonians for over 80 years. And York Beach does get a mite crowded in the summer. I recently heard my neighbor, Gramp Wiley, saying that they ain't got enough mosquitoes to go around down there. There might only be a dozen mosquitoes for every 20 to 30 people in midsummer. Some days the mosquitoes can't keep up and drop from nervous prostration trying to handle the crowds.
My name name is John Bridges, and I've been working here for 10 years. I'm head bake master at Bill Foster's Down East Clam Bake. We're starting to prepare for our Down East Clam Bake, which we're going to be serving here in about an hour and a half. What we have is we have a steel plate with a 1.5 inch lip, and we'll fill that steel plate with water, and then we'll put this wooden box on it. Now the wooden box has a screen wire bottom, like chicken wire, 1 by 1 inch squares, and that's to allow for the steam from the water which we put in the tray to pass on up through. We have our onions and our potatoes on the very bottom. Here's your potatoes, here's your onions. Serve about 25 people per bag. After we put our layer of corn down, we'll put our layer of lobster. Kind of just spread it all around so it's equal throughout. And on top of the lobster, we'll put our clams. Once the steam gets going, the clams will open up and release their juices, which fall down into the tray. And then you're using steam from the water, from the seaweed, and also from the clam juices. All your food is steamed, and it's all contained in one unit. Once this is all cooked, what we have to do is we have to unload it by hand. And it's hot and very difficult.
Up the coast a ways from York is a gunquit where you'll find Perkins Cove. It's been an artist's colony for the better part of this century, and they've got a museum there to prove it. And you know, we don't care if you don't spend your money on lobsters when you come up here to Maine. There's other ways of getting it from you. If you've ever been in any of them gift shops down to Perkins Cove, you know what I'm talking about. You ain't seen traffic until you've been to Kennebunk in the summertime between June and August. It used to be a quiet place, but lately traffic's gotten so bad they had to hire an expert to straighten things out. He was the guy from Boston who used to squeeze 6 lanes of traffic down to 2 so they'd fit in the Sumner Tunnel. Of course, there are also some quiet places in Kennebunkport. You can relax at one of them big old inns in town.
Well, the Captain Lord Mansion was actually built during the War of 1812 by a shipbuilder. He was not a sea captain. A very wealthy shipbuilder.
We think he probably picked up the name captain as gratuitous.
Well, you know, and was it Kentucky? Everybody's a colonel. In Maine, everybody's a captain. But when we came in 1978 to become owners, we're the ones who made the conversion to what it is today. Quite a special country inn.
It is truly a mansion, and therefore when you come here, you are staying in a luxury like you don't have at home. We've got the canopy beds, and we've got the camelback sofas, and we've got fireplaces in 11 of the 16 guest rooms. What I think makes us most special is that the size of the building itself. There's 20,000 square feet. I think what is special about innkeeping for Rick and I is the fact that we wanted to do something together. And so we decided to look for a business of our own. We came upon the Captain Lord Mansion. And innkeeping has fulfilled our dreams of working together and sharing and building something together. I think anywhere you go in Maine, you get a picture postcard look. It's not fictitious. it's real. You can say, I've been there, okay, I've seen it.
If you watched the news, you saw that storm they had a while back in Kennebunk. Washed half of George Bush's tennis court and half his house right into the ocean. Last I heard, he was being sued by the EPA for dumping him overboard without a permit. Old Orchard Beach is jokingly called the Canadian Riviera. Of course, some of the signs are in French, but it's really more like New Jersey with its boardwalk and all. Maine has many unique points of interest that are far removed from the normal tourist world. One of them is Portland's Old Port District with its bright, neat shops behind carefully restored brick fronts. They're mostly staffed by yappies, but then a visitor can't have everything. Portland is Maine's biggest city, but it doesn't have the urban problems found in many cities half its size. Imagine attending a meeting in a city where you can walk safe streets at any hour of the night. Ask anyone here if the streets are safe at night, and they'll probably think you're wondering about bears.
Well, I usually get up early in the morning, sometimes anywhere from 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on what time of year it is and how thick the lobsters are. And we'd get out to the boat and either bait up, or if we've already put bait aboard from the night before, we'd just head out to our first trap, which we usually run in strings, of anywhere from 10 to 100 traps in a string, depending on where the bottom is and how's it fishing. We'd start by looking for our color. Well, everybody has a different color buoy, and the buoy color, it makes it easy for you to distinguish which traps are yours and which are somebody else's. And from there, we'd haul our first trap, and the man I have going with me, our stern man, would take care of the front head in the trap where the bait's kept. He'd bait the bag and put the reds and herring in it, and bait the trap and clean out his end of the trap, and I'd be measuring the lobsters with a gauge the state has given us. It tells us what size we can keep and what size we have to throw back. You can haul a lot of traps and there'll be lobsters in them, but most of the lobsters, most of the time you have to throw back because either they're too small or they're too big, but mostly too small. After we'd haul and measure what lobsters we'd have, he would plug them and throw them in our tank. Plug them would be, he'd have to take and put a plug in the claw of the lobster so he wouldn't bite. Because one claw is like a feeding claw and the other claw is like a crusher claw. And the crusher claw is what we usually band because it really does smart. You could haul one trap and have 10 lobsters in it, and you could haul the next trap for nothing. And a lot of them are for nothing. A good day, you could have 500 pounds, and on a bad day, you could have 50 pounds. Some lobsters are shipped right out in the crates like we unloaded down Bird's Wharf. And other lobsters are put in in pounds where they're blocked off coves, and they leave these in there until wintertime when the price is up. I just liked it ever since I was a kid. I started out going with my father, and I enjoyed being on the water. I like the weather. I like being out in the open air. I can work for myself. I have nobody telling me what to do, and I enjoyed the scenery and just the fresh air, and just it's like treasure hunting. You know, you never know what you're going to get.
Lobsters and salt water are two of the most important crops here on the coast of Maine. That's because when many of these fellows that work in the lobster stores come to sell you your lobsters, they'll dip out a handful of salt water at the same time they put the lobster in the bag. And when you come to pay your bill, you can figure you've paid about $4 a pound for seawater. Now that puts a price of $300 a barrel on the Atlantic Ocean. And if you're willing to buy it at that price, I got acres of it out back my house. I'd be glad to sell you, wholesale. You stop by anytime.
A pound is a holding place for lobsters. It's not because we sell them by the pound, it's because we have them stored inside there. We're in Trenton, Maine. We're at the Trenton Bridge Lobster Pound. This is where we sell the lobsters by the pound, and we bring them out here and boil them in the seawater. These are built out of blocks, cookers, and they're fired with wood. They have a much better flavor boiled in the seawater, and it's lobster in the rough. People pick out the size, we weigh them and cook them, and they eat them right inside or outside, or we wrap them to go. They crack the shell, pick the meat out themselves, and eat them right here. A lot of the local people come here, and it's no frills. They just can eat lobster.
Above Portland begins the section of the coast called Mid-Coast Maine. This area of islands and long fingers of land jutting into the ocean creates miles of scenic coast and quaint fishing villages to explore.
Mid-Coast Maine is the part of the state where you might begin to meet the true Mainers. This Maine native is usually a person who lives on the rugged, worthless land his ancestors settled in the 1700s, who's quietly looking for someone from away, foolish enough to buy it, so he can invest in a red three-wheeler and move into a wicked, sharp trailer park near Orlando. Every person in a coastal town bears an appellation that is the most perceptive assessment of his character that anybody could make. It identifies his weakest and most obnoxious point. One man out on Bailey Island who hauled lobster traps all his life, usually someone else's, was called the Phantom. Finally, he accepted it himself to the point where he proudly painted the name on his boat.
For much of Maine, the long-wearing clothes made by L.L. Bean had become a kind of fashion statement. For instance, one afternoon I stopped in at Ralph Klein's sawmill while dressed in my friendly old insulated L.L. Bean jacket I'd bought down the store in Freeport some 25 years ago. Now, I'd worn it in the woods until it was literally hanging about me in tatters. Ralph looked it up and down, wasted 3 wooden matches trying to light his pipe, spit, finally said, "Be kind of dangerous to wear that jacket working around machinery. But the only thing it's fit for now is to wear into town."
Booth Bay Harbor's one of the more popular destinations here in Maine. When most tourists get here, they just get on a boat, go round in a circle, land, and go home.
The attraction on the Islander is probably has to do with historical significance of the area, but also the natural scenic beauty and the many islands that make up the Boothbay region. The islander here is 3 years old actually, but it's built as a near replica of the old steamships that used to ply these waters. I think there's a draw to the coast of Maine, and Boothbay Harbor has all these islands here to visit, as well as all the scenery. The Boothbay Harbor itself is actually built on tourism, and so they provide all the necessities for the tourist crowd. We see a lot of nature at its best, actually. Seals, many different kind of waterfowl, including double-crested cormorants and ospreys, great blue heron, those type of birds. We also see fishermen, the working fishermen, lobstering and also catching pogies in their nets. There's also the lighthouses and many islands in this area to see.
Boothbay Harbor is one of the few places in Maine where the natives talk like out-of-staters. This is because tourists from Boston and New York not only spend July and August here, but have moved right in to become year-round summer people. 2 generations of children in Boothbay Harbor have been exposed to this hodgepodge of dialects, leaving them without a linguistic identity. You know, the people of Wiscasset are among the most frugal in the whole state of Maine. That might be because right there, in the heart of downtown Wiscasset, there's a constant reminder that if you don't take care of what you've got, someday it's gonna be gone. I was down to the Oyster Festival in Damariscotta last summer. A man there on the fairgrounds was telling me how much he loved eating them oysters. 'Cause I kinda made a face. He says, "What's the matter with you? It's really no worse than having a bad cold." Down to the end of the road here in St. George is the fishing village of Port Clyde, which is just as far as any sober citizen has driven in an automobile. If it looks familiar, it's because Andy Wyeth has been painting the people and houses here since he was a kid. Not that this has meant riches for the natives, which is all right, because the people here have always been frugal. Consider the case of Morris Hupper's great-great-grandfather who fished out of Port Clyde over 100 years ago. Now, for some reason or other, he wasn't able to get a rack of dried fish to market when he wanted to. And once they turned black, no amount of scrubbing would get them clean. Great-great-grandfather Hupper had no choice. It was either throw away a week's catch or whitewash each one and sell the whole business down in Portland.
The Maine coast has always been known for dangers, with its rough seas, rocky shoals, and treacherous tides. Mariners have needed all the help they could get to ply these waters. No symbol evokes the dangers of this coast more thoroughly than the lonely lighthouse, set out as a mute sentinel warning of the perils below. The light here at Portland Head is considered the archetype of the Maine lighthouse. And the Bass Harbor light on Mount Desert Island is easily recognized as one of the visual symbols of New England. The light at Port Clyde still marks the entrance to a very busy fishing harbor. These Maine lighthouses are so famous that groups of devoted lighthouse buffs scour the coast, searching for both the well-known and the hidden lights. Some lights are popular for the dramatic beauty of their location, like this one at Pemaquid Point. For the true lighthouse buff, there's also a lighthouse and fishing museum to be found here at Pemaquid Point. Other lights are remote, dotting many of the offshore islands. In fact, along this coast, there are over 65 lights or remnants of lights marching in ragged file down the coast, from the northeastern edge of the state at Quatty Head to the continually photographed light at the Nubble in York Beach. But the life of these lights has changed. Where each one had to be tended by a lighthouse keeper, today all the old keepers' houses are shuttered and abandoned. The last manned lighthouse was at Owl's Head.
Light Station Owl's Head is located on the southwest point of Penobscot Bay, just entering the bay. Back in the early 1800s, after quite a few shipwrecks in the area, Congress deemed it necessary to establish a light here at Owl's Head. My name is Jerry Graham. I'm a first-class boatswain's mate. I'm the officer in charge. My duties here at Light Station Owl's Head are basically to administrate the unit, take care of paperwork. The government's famous for its paperwork. To maintain the cleanliness of the area, make sure the gate itself is kept in working order. Well, the light itself that's located up in the tower is the original light. Records show that it was built in the early 1800s, although the exact date of manufacture isn't known because over the years of polishing, the engraved date has been worn away. But it is a beautiful optic. It's called a fourth order classical lens, originally powered by whale oil. Congress has deemed it necessary to automate the lighthouses as a cost-cutting measure. This particular lighthouse is slated for May of 1990, and at that time this will be the last Maine lighthouse, family lighthouse. I think when people think of lighthouses, they picture a little much like the coast here, wave-swept, rocky, isolated, just a lighthouse keeper with his wife and his family, alone and together. And I suppose that conjures up images of romance. It is beautiful. You never really get tired of the view. I think you're looking at one of the most beautiful spots on the coast of Maine, and the coast of Maine is one of the most beautiful spots in the whole country as far as I'm concerned. We'll always have fond memories of our duties here at Light Station Owl's Head.
Most people come to Maine to find that special quality they're missing at home. But once they get here, a lot of them seem to suffer a relapse and get stricken with shopping frenzy. One fella I know wouldn't go into them Freeport outlets with his wife. Says he couldn't stand the smell of burning plastic. These people just seem to want to shop their way up the coast from Camden to Bar Harbor. For some people, there's a search for fine pieces of art or fine crafts, like those fancy Windsor chairs at Jim Brown's up near my wife's school in Lincolnville.
Here we make Windsor chairs, dining tables, china cabinets, beds, things like that, but mostly Windsor chairs. We make a sackback chair, which the arm is bent and the bow is bent, and the spindles all run through the arm and the bow, and the legs run through the seat. I came here 4 years ago to this beautiful part of the country to make Windsor chairs. It's something I've always enjoyed. These Windsor chairs, as I'm fond of telling people that come to our shop, are very strong and durable. They're made out of ash, with the same thing hockey sticks, baseball bats, and axe handles are made out of. This white pine seat, this ash is very strong. These joints are epoxied, as I mentioned on the other chair. This enables us to guarantee stand behind this chair indefinitely for you. That flexibility is what keeps that chair from breaking. Our chairs, we feel, are so comfortable that if you sit in our chairs and don't feel they're comfortable, we'll invite you then to come over here and sit in the sand over here, leave your imprint with us, and we'll custom make this chair for you. I think the sheer thought of leaving your bum imprint up here in the state of Maine on vacation is enough to convince you that our chairs are comfortable.
For some folks, nothing expresses the true local culture like Maine whimsies. Lawyer Crandall once handled a divorce case where the entire estate consisted of 400 lawn ornaments. Crandall says they're the Maine equivalent of the U.S. savings bond.
What makes a Maine craft is, well, we live in Maine and we make them, and it's Maine. Most of it's made with a Maine pine. Yep, my name's Darrell Gray. This is my wife Joanne. We make a lot of the stuff ourselves. And this year the unique thing is the animals, Tweety Bird and Sylvester. Well, a lot of them I'll think up on my own.
Some are patterns that we found, and some we've had other people ask for, and we've made them up the best we could.
But you meet an awful lot of, interesting people. This summer I had a couple in here from England. They don't have skunks in England. So they wanted a set of skunks to send back some of their family over there in England. And I said, just a minute, I'll run out back and get you a couple of live ones. Glad to get rid of them.
The upper end of Mid-Coast Maine is Penobscot Bay and Mount Desert Island. This is the heart of Mid-Coast Maine, the jewel of the Maine coast. Sailors come from all over the world for a chance to cruise these waters.
In and around Penobscot Bay, there are dozens of inhabited islands. These have spawned a unique species of folk who can discuss any topic in depth, whether they know anything about it or not. Their isolation has caused them to become pretty self-reliant. Now, this is especially true as far as their health care is concerned. To this day, before any of them island kids go to a dance, their mother will give them a big spoonful of molasses and sugar with chopped onions. And they never catch anything.
Down at the southwest corner of Penobscot Bay is Monhegan. The rhythm of life is slow here, and even a bit odd. In fact, the natives don't even lobster in the summer. They just park their boats, haul the traps ashore, then they go down to watch the tourists get off the Laura B. Most visitors walk back into the woods and out along the rocky cliffs where one can have the most eerie and unsettling experience to be found in the world today. For here on Monhegan, one can walk for hours without seeing a hamburger wrapper or shake container. You must walk quietly through these sylvan glens, preserving a religious silence so as not to bother the 200 or 300 Monhegan artists you will find, elbow to elbow, daubing away. No wonder, you exclaim, who could help being moved to such an outpouring of expression by the natural beauty which everywhere abounds? When you pause to think about it, however, you realize that here in Monhegan, there's absolutely nothing else to do. The community of summer people in Rockport is so exclusive that they have transcended the yacht club. They have Maine's only boat club. Camden, like Boothbay, is one of those places that just seems to attract people from away. Maybe it's the shops on Main Street. Maybe it's the harbor. Camden is famous for being where they film Peyton Place. When I saw it, I was shocked. They got on the bus there in Peyton Place. The bus took off to go to Boston. And then, by gosh, the cussed thing turned left and went down over the hill and headed north for Bangor. One of the largest islands in the bay is Deer Isle. It's a classic Maine landscape. Of course, most everyone has seen big color pictures of Maine's docks and rock-bound coasts. Amateur photographers love it. Where else in the world but Stonington can you find wrinkle-faced lobstermen in check shirts unloading their catch as they polish the lines they plan to use the next time they're on the David Letterman show? Down in Blue Hill, where they're protecting a lot of old fortunes, the people are pretty frugal. And the place you see it the most is at the yearly town meeting. Last March, one of the citizens stood up and asked the Board of Selectmen what they intended to pay the town attorney for the year. The selectman said, anything he asks. Now, if you want to get a real feel for the character of the place, you might drop in on Mary Hartley at the Blue Hill Inn.
Blue Hill is unique. It is a community that I think is probably unlike any community in Maine, or actually anywhere I've lived. The place just is filled with many people with interesting backgrounds, all who are very accomplished in their own fields. And they live here. They may sell their wares elsewhere, but they live here. The inn itself is 161 years old, and it's been an inn since 1840. We have 11 rooms in the inn, 3 with working fireplaces, 2 with sitting rooms. All of them are furnished in furniture that's particular to the period. The Blue Hill Inn is a special place to come. People who come begin to relax when they come through the door. We've been on the fast track. We know what it's like to be on the fast track. The Maine Coast is just wonderfully relaxing. We just recently had a guest who was here, and he said that coming here was less expensive than going to a psychiatrist and much more beneficial. And I think that's absolutely correct. The rhythm of life here is real. It's slow, but it's very much in tune with nature. It's different.
Some people from away think that Mount Desert Island is the only place worth visiting in Maine, but it's a little too primitive for me. You can travel over that entire island without finding one McDonald's. Now, I admit, it does have the national park, but that was put together by the Rockefellers and their rich friends who've been coming here for years.
But there's another side to the island. Bar Harbor is a mecca for tourists, and the folks who own the gift shops are waiting for them. They really like to market their connection to the sea, as my neighbor Gramp Wiley found out. Now, Gramp Wiley has always loved boats. Since he retired from lobstering a year ago, he's been building an exact replica of the vessel his great-grandfather skippered back in the 1800s. Only after months of research did he begin fitting together the thousands of microscopic splinters of carefully seasoned wood. One night, one of his classmates dropped in to see him. "Oh," she said, "I've never seen anything so beautiful." And I knew she meant it, because her eyes get all watery and she get all choked up. "You know," she said, "I got a little gift shop now down in Bar Harbor, and if you would give me 50 of those boats on consignment, I could probably get you $12 apiece."
The Bar Harbor Inn is a central location. It's the spot to stay when you're in Bar Harbor. The boating activities are right at our door. Main Street's up at the top of our hill here. I feel privileged to be the host of the guests who come to the inn because I feel that Bar Harbor, Acadia National Park, and Mount Desert Island is truly the most beautiful island in North America. It was originally built in 1887, and it was a private men's club. It was called the Oasis Club, and the membership included such notables as the Pullises, the Morgans, the Rockefellers. Even President Taft has visited the inn. The point that we're on is really where Frenchman's Bay and the Atlantic Ocean meet. And along the front of our property is the famous Bar Harbor Shore Path. It's open to the public, and it's about a 1-mile walk that starts at the inn, and it goes along the Atlantic Ocean in front of the many private, beautiful estates along the ocean front beyond the inn. It's a magnificent location, and the historic aspect of the Bar Harbor Inn being over 100 years old, and yet it offers modern resort hotel facility. It's just an outstanding property. It's a very special property.
Down around Southwest Harbor, you'll find a lot of places where old money's been moldering for years. Every spring, you'll also find certain members of the granola cult who move back to their humble cabins in the woods. All summer long, they struggle to get by, mowing lawns and eking out a meager existence from their hand-dug gardens. Then, in late September, mysterious 50-foot yachts sail into the harbor, and the next day, these folks are gone.
The ceaseless competition of rock and water is the true theater of the Maine Coast, and nowhere is this drama more beautifully played than in Acadia National Park. Acadia is by all odds the most popular destination in Maine, and it's unique in that it was the first national park east of the Mississippi. In Acadia, the water does more than wear against the rocky coast. Here is the only place on the North American Atlantic coast where it crashes against the very mountains. This constant play of elemental forces works to create one of nature's true wonderlands. It is the Maine Coast amplified. The wonderful forms and rhythms of the region are all magnified here. You can fill your eyes with the jagged sculpture of surf-beaten rocks and quietly walk to the delicate charms of a mountain lake. Most people discover Acadia via the Park Loop Road. This road stays within the confines of the park and was designed to allow the visitor to quickly reach many of Acadia's scenic wonders. Most people end up thinking that the only things worth seeing in the park are those near the Loop Road. The first stop out of Bar Harbor is the Cerdamont Springs and the Wild Gardens of Acadia. This is a surprisingly delightful place to spend a while, since the local garden club has prepared a display of the local flora so that you'll know what you're looking at later in the park. Next, you'll find Sand Beach, a particularly popular summertime destination, since it's one of very few real beaches along this rocky coast. The temperature of the Maine water, however, guarantees that few people actually go swimming at Sand Beach. Beyond Sand Beach is the most scenic and popular stretch of rocky shore in the park. This section of massive red stone is where you can be assured plenty of company for watching the show. The centerpiece of the shore is Thunder Hole. On the right tide, the name becomes obvious. Beyond Thunder Hole rise Otter Cliffs. These sheer cliffs climb 200 feet out of the ocean and offer magnificent views back on the park. Just one of the many spectacles available from the Loop Road.
I think it's important to realize that coming to Acadia and just doing the Park Loop Road is like seeing the very tip of an iceberg. Acadia National Park has much to see, and driving the Loop Road only hints at what the park really has to offer. My name is Lois Winter. I'm a park naturalist at Acadia National Park, and I'd like to share with you today some of the things that I find special. What makes Acadia special to me are not necessarily the places that others have labeled as scenic highlights. The specialness of Acadia rests in those places off the beaten track, where I can enjoy solitude, appreciate the beauty of the natural world, and reflect on our cultural heritage. There are, for example, 120 miles of hiking trails and 50 miles of carriage roads in Acadia National Park. One of the delightful things about the park's carriage roads is that they offer people an opportunity to hike with a great deal of leisure. The carriage roads are more than gravel roads. The carriage roads were built as an answer to the coming of motorized traffic on Mount Desert Island. John D. Rockefeller Jr., one of those summer residents, decided to build a network of gravel roads through the backcountry of Acadia for himself and for his friends, and in fact for anyone who wanted to use them. so that everyone would have the opportunity to enjoy the backcountry of Acadia, free from the noise of the infernal combustion engine. Almost all of Acadia's shoreline is rocky, which brings up one of my favorite pastimes here. It's called doing nothing on the rocks. It's delightful, I think, to find a comfortable rock, to sit on the shore, to watch the gulls fly by, the boats chug along, and the tides rise and fall. Visiting Acadia in a day is kind of like visiting the Smithsonian in a day. It doesn't work. So to see Acadia in a way that the spirit of this place soaks in really takes time. For me, I can find the specialness of Acadia in things as diverse as the chatter of warblers in the spring, the grand vistas from the mountaintops, and the intricacies of the design of carriage roads. So if you come to Acadia, take the time and visit at a pace that allows you to find your own special attractions.
Some of the most quiet and magical parts of Acadia are to be found after you pass Otter Cliffs, where there are miles of rocky shore with a lot less traffic. You should walk or bike this section of the park in order to discover a special rock or cove to briefly enjoy as your own. When the Park Loop Road turns inland away from the coast, there are also a lot of special places to be found in this varied section of mountains, lakes, and forests. In the middle of the island, you'll find a lovely nature trail around Jordan Pond and past the round mountains called the Bubbles. It's customary to stop here for tea and popovers. Beyond Jordan Pond, the Loop Road takes you through quiet woods and mountain vistas until it turns off and winds to the summit of Cadillac Mountain. At 1,530 feet, Cadillac Mountain is the highest spot on the eastern seaboard of the United States. It's where the first light of the rising sun touches the United States. Viewing this sunrise from Cadillac Mountain is often thought to be the crowning attraction of any visit to Acadia National Park. It is literally the high point of your tour of the Maine Coast.
So much of the Maine Coast livelihood is made up of catering to the summer people that years ago we learned how to get them in, get their money, and get them out. But lately, there's been a breakdown in the system. Hundreds of thousands of tourists have bought houses here to become year-round summer people so they can enjoy the good life. First thing they do is introduce their grandchildren and their neighbors to the area, and then they try to get us natives to pass legislation banning further developments.
New England holds a special place in the American heart. From the rock-bound coast of Maine to the quiet of a mountain village, there is a sense of enduring beauty and timeless values. Now you can experience the magic of New England through Sight Productions' series of video portraits. These prize-winning video tours offer you a chance to live and relive the wonder of the real New England, and to meet some of the people that make any visit memorable. In Portrait of Boston, you can discover the American Revolution along the Freedom Trail, mix with the crowds at Quincy Market, explore old neighborhoods and parks, and spend time in quaint Beacon Hill. And you can ride on the historic swan boats.
Swan boats are a symbol of Boston. Just like the cable car in San Francisco or the Empire State Building in New York City. They were started in 1876 by a man named Robert Paget. Now, he's the grandfather of the...
Cape Cod and the islands takes you to the Cape Cod National Seashore, then down the streets of the quaint old towns. You'll visit the summer island of Martha's Vineyard and the historic island of Nantucket, and just spend some time relaxing on the beach. You'll find the special beauty of Cape Cod with a local painter.
I'm a professional painter on Cape Cod and loving every minute of it. I've chosen to work on Cape Cod because of its beauty and because of the variety of beauty. The light on the Cape is very silvery.
New Hampshire's White Mountains and Clear Lakes takes you to one of America's oldest resort destinations. Here you can visit the loons, explore Mount Washington, and ride on a historic lake steamer. You'll find Franconia Notch and thrill to the autumn foliage, collect sap for maple syrup, and visit a country fair.
What's special about Sandwich Fair is the location, the time of the year with the foliage, and the events going on. We have a round circuit of events going on continuous for 3 days. And of the town of Sandwich, it's got a long tradition of country people.
In the Maine Coast, you will experience the grandeur of Acadia National Park and the romance of the lonely lighthouse. You'll go fishing for lobster and discover the rugged coastline with its quiet coves. And you'll set sail on a Maine windjammer.
She's a 90-foot schooner that we carry passengers for hire on. She's typical of the kind of vessel that was built 100 years ago on this coast to haul freight and cargoes up and down the coast. She was built specifically.
Newport and the Rhode Island coast will take you to the queen of American resorts. Here you can discover the excesses of the Gilded Age, the romance of colonial Newport, and the excitement of world-class yacht racing. And America's oldest 4th of July parade.
It's the oldest and largest in the country. And this is a year-round celebration, year-round working to get it set for this day.
In Vermont, there is the timeless appeal of the Green Mountains with their well-tended farms and fishing rivers. You can discover the quaint villages and autumn splendor that makes the state famous. Here there are folk arts and balloon rides, mountain music and maple sugar. There's even a day on the family farm.
My mother said that as soon as I was able to creep, I used to start for the barn frequently, so I guess I've been farming almost all the 82 years. There's a degree of independence and there's just love of the land and love of the animals and that sort of thing.
So come along and discover the real New England. Choose your favorite destinations and order now. These tapes are only $24.95 each, or even better, $19.95 each when you order 3 or more. So call 1-800-424-0030 now to order a special memory of your own piece of New England.